Hey, this is James Arnold Taylor, voice actor, the voice of Yabba-dabba-doo, Fred Flintstone,
Johnny Test, who's 11 years old and totally awesome,
Ratchet from Ratchet and Clank, Tidus from Final Fantasy X. Oh, yes, and of course, Obi-Wan Kenobi. It wouldn't be Coffee with Kenobi without yours truly. The Force is strong here indeed. Previously on Coffee with Kenobi.
It's been really cool seeing what has it been, like 7-8 months it's been out for now, like people connect with it. And yeah, I mean, it's been cool. It's been a great 7 months, a very unexpected 7 months, but I'm definitely been happy with it, and just grateful people are enjoying it.
So what is one of the highlights you've had as far as the promotional tour went?
Let's see.
Besides being on the show, of course.
Of course. Yes, of course.
This is James Arnold Taylor, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi. I have a good feeling about this.
I definitely appreciate Mike and his sense of humor. Hello, everybody, and welcome to show number 137 of Coffee with Kenobi, your place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, rhetoric, and the best travel tips this side of the galaxy. I'm your host, Dan Z, drinking One Nation coffee out of my travel CWK coffee mug. For whatever reason, I only seem to be able to finish my coffee when I'm drinking it out of a coffee mug, so I may as well use the Coffee with Kenobi one with that awesome logo that Corey designed. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on CWK. I invite you to join me in thinking about the mythology of Star Wars in a whole new way and have some laughs with me as we picture ourselves among our friends, going to our favorite coffee shop, and talking some Star Wars. On today's show, I have Swara, Salih, and Angela Saus back talking about their top 5 episodes or moments of Season 4 of Star Wars Rebels. The Blu-ray came out recently of Season 4. I will have a review of that later in the show, as well as an interview with Ashley Eckstein, who of course is the voice of Ahsoka Tano, and Tom will join us for the latest Star Wars news. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi.
And now, let's see what's brewing in the Star Wars universe this week.
The familiar voice of Tom Kane, who of course is the voice of the narrator from Clone Wars and Yoda, among many other things. He's an awesome guy. And because this is Clone Wars, let's start off the show. I want to thank you for your feedback on what we should do about the return of Clone Wars. We're narrowing it down very closely to how we want to celebrate the return of the show. But please keep on sending in your ideas and suggestions about how you like us to cover the return. Do you want us to go back and look at a little bit of each of the episodes? There are quite a few of them, over 100, but we can certainly do that. I just want to know what you think, and I'll be happy to implement that into the regular show. Speaking of the show, I was looking at this, and I take some pretty detailed notes when I'm making these outlines. This is show 137, as I said at the top, but if you count overall, with all the shows that I've ever done with Corey, or just when Corey left the show, 230 shows so far, as you may see on the web post for the Coffee with Kenobi podcast that comes out every week. I always have something in parentheses, not on iTunes, but I have it on the website. And whenever you see that, that's how many shows we've done total since we first turned on the microphone over 5 years ago. However, I just noticed that this is the 72nd show I've done without Corey as a regular host. That is really, really wild to me. I can't wait to tell him that. He's going to be stunned as well. Of course, you can hear him regularly on CWK. Pour over the Patreon show that Corey and myself and Tom grows to every week. For this week's show, we did our favorite John Williams individual tracks as well as overall soundtracks, and that was great fun. I'm going to share a clip of that later in the show.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first?
Joining us today for a cup of coffee are 2 returning guests and great friends of the show. First, we have Swara Salih from Beltway Banthas.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going fantastic, and not only from Beltway Banthas, but a new podcast. Well, it's not a new podcast, but they have a new host, and the show just got. It was a great show. It already got better because you're the host. What's the show, buddy?
Yeah, I'm now one of the main co-hosts of the Flash podcast that's run by Andy Bebecht, who runs all of a lot of the DC TV podcast shows, like the network DC TV podcast. There are many DC TV podcasts, but we're the one that's been around the longest, I think. And I'm so glad I was brought on as a summer co-host to review season 4. And Andy and our fellow co-host Tatiana got along great. So we're going to be the main co-hosts for season 5 of The Flash, which is one of my favorite TV shows. And I'm really excited about it.
It's super cool. And Andy and I used to chat quite a bit. We haven't as much lately, but we used to talk a lot about some different things on Twitter. So it's cool. That's great. That's great. Also great is that we have another favorite of Coffee with Kenobi, Angela Saus.
Hey, everyone. I'm so glad to be back.
And I did enjoy that you put on Twitter that I gave you homework. I gave Swara homework too, didn't I?
You did, in true Star Wars in the classroom fashion.
That's right. That's right. Well, school starts for me next week, so I gotta get ready.
Oh, fun!
It was very fun. I'm actually quite excited. I love teaching, but I also love talking Star Wars with each and every one of you. And this week, as promised, we're going to look at Star Wars Rebels Season 4. Of course, the Blu-ray came out later in the show. I will have my interview with Ashley Eckstein about that and about other things. And then we're also going to have a review of this. But before we get to any of that, I asked Swara and Angela to give me sort of a top 5 moments or episodes from Season 4, and I have them as well. So let's see what we've got. Angela, why don't we start with you? What's the first one you have?
The first one that I have, okay, there are so many, and it was really, really challenging for me to get through and just pick 5. I have a lot of honorable mentions as well. But one of the ones that really, when I go through the list of the episodes in Season 4, and really this was hard to go back through. I had not done a lot of rewatching or going back through Season 4. It was very emotional. So I really had to go back through this with a little bit of a fine-tooth comb. One that stuck out for me as being a particularly pivotal episode, and just had so many key moments, was Flight of the Defender. It wasn't one I was expecting to be that big of a deal until I went back and looked at it. And besides just the obvious, the Loth cats, I love the Loth cats. But there was also a lot of the introduction of the Loth wolf, and we really got to get into why the Loth wolf was so important. And I really appreciated the continued development of Sabine and Ezra's, the way they continued to come into their own. In this episode, they were working together. Their development was really snowballing at this point, and there was a lot of depending on each other, a lot of having to make decisions in the heat of the moment and try and do what was best, not knowing the full story. So I really appreciated the character development in that. And I saw a lot of development for Ezra in that episode as well. These weren't necessarily my favorite characters either, but I still really appreciate knowing what Star Wars Rebels was supposed to represent, the story that it was supposed to tell us, and how far it went with this episode, and how we really saw a pivotal point as we were gearing up for that series finale. Oh yeah. And see, that point alone, we can spend probably an entire show on just that episode and different things like that. And of course, Aaron Harris did it on Rebels Reaction. Sure did. Beautifully. And that's the fun. This is going to be, we have such a short amount of time to talk about all these, but that's a key moment too. Oh, wow. I'm going to try to be careful because I don't want to take all the airtime just talking about that, but that is a good one. That's a very good one. Plus there's so much tension there. Swara, there was a lot. What's your first one?
My first one, which isn't necessarily my top one, but one that's earlier in the season, is from the episode In the Name of the Rebellion, where we get the return of Saw Gerrera, and he's and his group are causing some, maybe from your point of view, ruckus, or a noble crusade, doing what the rebellion won't dare to do. There was a particular moment in here that I really, really appreciated, with actually one of the characters I've loved since I was a kid, Mon Mothma. That debate between Mon and hologram Saw Gerrera. I thought it was very interesting, the sort of parallels you could make between the kind of things they were arguing about and sort of political tactics going on, and political debates going on in our own country, and whether in parties or between parties, etc. I found it really interesting, how we see Saw as the quote extremist or radical, and Mon as the person who wants to abide by the rules of engagement, who wants to make sure that the rebellion are seen as saviors and not, from how people may view Saul as terrorists. But as I've been reflecting more and more on this moment, I realized that Saw really did push Mon Mothma and the other rebel leaders into the actions that they would do during Rogue One, when they would steal the Death Star plans and dare to attack Scarif to get those plans. Obviously, it was the impetus of the Rogue One crew, but still, I could very well imagine how talking with Saw and really being pressured and persuaded by him. And at the end of their exchange, he says, "That's it. That's the Mon Mothma. That's the leader the rebellion needs." So I find this dynamic and this back and forth between them very interesting. And as y'all know, I do a Star Wars politics podcast, so I'm very interested in the specific politics of, like the galactic government, of the different factions, resistance and rebellion movements. And I thought this was a very good moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and talk about politics I think it's great because at first blush, obviously episode 1 and episode 2 particularly have a lot of politics. Well, I guess the entire prequel series does. But Rebels is ensconced in it as well from a very different perspective. Mm-hmm. We're talking about even though the inner politics of a rebellion trying to find its way. And again, this is going to be great because you could talk so much about that as well. My first one, and just like the both of you, this isn't necessarily the number one that I have from the season, although it very well could be 1A, and that would be the final episode with Kanan. I love that character. Kanan has become not only one of my favorite Star Wars characters, but one of my favorite fictional characters anyway. And a lot of that is the friendship I've been fortunate to sort of cultivate with Freddie, and just sort of hearing him talk about Star Wars and Kanan is great. But that the sacrifice obviously is huge in the beginning when he cuts his hair, very samurai style. But another key thing about this that I think is as important is we see Hera's vulnerability. I mean, true vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And it was very moving because she's always so strong, but not from a fake place. She has a genuine strength and inner confidence that most characters don't have. And that is because she is so focused, but not obsessed. She's smart and she's focused. And then we see this vulnerability to an extreme because this is a very extreme situation. The person she loves, who will be, spoiler, the father of her child, is, she sees him die and she's vulnerable. But the way she honors him at the end is, I keep thinking Kakamora, but that's the little coconut thing from Moana that chases.
Oh my God! Yeah, so good.
Thank you though for the.
Is it Kalikori? I think that's what it's called.
It is, but
yeah.
So the Kakamora was a great. We needed that humorous moment there. I was getting emotional just thinking about the episode.
I had to lighten the mood. So so that's my number one. What is, Angel? What's your second one?
Oh, my second one. I had also written down. Like Swara did, In the Name of the Rebellion, because of those embroiling moments that we saw. Essentially, these two characters of Mon Mothma and Saw wanting the same thing, but being willing to, employ different means to get there. So that was one of the things I had written down. Also, just because I really liked how that episode tied in so much to what we're going to see in the future of the Star Wars universe. We had Yavin 4 in there. I loved that was finally tied together. We got to see with Saw in this episode and how it leads into the decisions that are made to Rogue One. I really liked those tie-ins that made Rebels that much more impactful to the universe. So many people have tried to just brush it off as an animated little side series. It's not important, but I thought that In the Name of the Rebellion was really showing some key elements that make it so essential to the development of the arc that we have as we go into the Star Wars movies.
Sure. Not only do I love your point, but I like that you said Saw and you didn't even bat an eye.
I didn't.
We get to see Saw.
Nice.
I literally am happy.
Oh God.
You lighten the mood as well. Thank you.
That's good. But that was definitely one that I written down. I liked those little pieces, those little tidbits that, and I think this is part of why I was so enamored with the Rebels series, was it feels like those first Star Wars movies, which is something that I really loved. And so I appreciated those small moments in there that tie that all together. I loved some of the lines in that were excellent. You talked about Hera's resolve in your last moment. I love how she said, we don't call the ship the Ghost for nothing. That confidence was there. And I saw also in that episode, I don't want to say it was foreshadowing, but there was this sense of, we saw Hera's confidence. She's frustrated. We started to see some of those cracks where she's been so confident, as you were talking about previously, Dan, but we start to see her falter just a little bit because she's feeling some frustration. And then we see Kanan almost do the opposite, where he almost is pulling back and he's more, I don't want to say at peace, but he's just more in tune with the Force and seems to have a greater sense of calm and understanding of what's to come.
Peace and purpose, just like
he's
in The Last Jedi.
He's just almost gone, 180 from where he was, 2 seasons before. He's like, I don't want to do this. This isn't what I signed up for. To now he's like, I've accepted this. And he's the one actually calming Hera down in that moment of, she's just like, I want to hit back. I want to do this. And he said, but that's not you. And he overall just seemed to have a sense of pulling back and acceptance and strength, unity with the Force, where he just really understood what was happening. I think before maybe he even realized it, but we saw that happen a lot in that episode.
So another one of my favorite moments was at the very beginning of season 4, Heroes of Mandalore, which was presented as a 2-parter, almost like a mini movie, as I'm looking at it on Wikipedia right now, in which Sabine goes back to was it Mandalore? No, sorry, her home planet to save her family. Sorry, it's one of the colonized planets of Mandalore. Apologies.
You're forgiven.
It's a lot of details.
I appreciate it. And I really liked in this episode, we had already met Sabine's mom and brother Tristan, but the moment I really liked the most was meeting Sabine's father and getting to see where she got her artistic side. And also what I really liked about seeing both of her parents was that they really seemed to deftly challenge, quote, traditional gender roles. You had the mother, the matriarch, who was the really strong figure, very authoritative. It's clear that her family is a kind of matriarchy, whereas, and I believe it was her mom's original last name, Ren, that her father took on. And her father is the quote unquote more feminine type, who very artistic. And that's where Sabine got her artistic traits from. And I just really liked how in this show that's being presented to little kids, showing that there are many different ways to be a strong man and a strong woman. And it really, in my opinion, helps tackle those traditional gender roles, which sometimes can be very damaging. And I really applaud Dave Filoni and the writers for doing this. I think it was really great. I love Sabine's family.
I do too. That was that first episode of that thing of the little arc was shown at Celebration Orlando, and I remember the ending was so stunning.
We were both there, but we didn't meet each other there. I think we met later.
we met at that Leia.
At the Carrie Gala, yeah,
that's right. Well, anyway, that's a segue, but an important one, and it's a very powerful one. My second one is also from that same arc, ironically, and it's Kanan's lightsaber prowess in the first episode of season 4. It just basically shows you can tell he's fully rounded in his in tune nature with the Force, and he's just so skilled, and he was so powerful at the beginning of this. I remember thinking, oh gosh, Kanan's not going to last. He's way too powerful now. He's too good. He's making this too easy. There's no way he's going to stick around. Otherwise, they wouldn't need Luke as much as they will end up needing him. And it gave me sort of a mixed emotional feeling, because I thought, oh man, this is bittersweet, but I'm just going to drink in this moment because, again, I love Kanan. And that was just fun. It was just very, very entertaining and engaging. And again, sort of a harbinger of what was to come. So, Angela, what is your third one?
My third one, oh gosh, this is where I start. They start dominoing on me because I'm like, which one do I pick next to talk about? Because I still have so many. I love going back and looking at, again, still not my favorite character, but I still adore Ezra. I appreciate where he went in World Between Worlds and the lessons that had to be taught. And I really felt like that was one that kind of spoke to me because I had gone from, we went, Jedi Knight and Doom, and I was a hot mess after watching those, an absolute emotional basket case. And the lesson to be learned in World Between Worlds was important. I think not just for Ezra, but I think I kind of felt it important for a lot of fans who have been really upset that maybe episodes or movies didn't go the way they wanted, and how sometimes that's just not the way it happens, and that's not the way the story unfolds, even though there were so many ways that it could happen or so many ways it could change. That wasn't, look what would happen if it had gone this way. And it was just an interesting piece on perspective, and really forced me to stop and accept what they had done, even though I did not like that they took Kanan away. I did not like that at all. But I could see the point that they were making. I don't have to like it, but I still accept that it was part of the story they chose to tell, and it was part of Ezra's development. It was part of what he needed to realize, that he had to let it go, and for all the puns that now brings up, but it was really powerful, and it's still hard for me to swallow that pill. It really is. Even going back to look at it,
because they want you to care about and love these characters, and
they do. And these, so I was terribly emotionally ensconced in the characters here. So yes, it hit really hard. I mean, it took a long time to actually be able to sit down and look at this critically. So, I felt like that was an important episode just for the growth that you can experience as a Star Wars fan, and going through this and going through so much content. There is a lot to be applied outside of being a fan.
That's right.
And I think it's something, you don't have to like it or appreciate it, but I sure do. So.
Oh yeah. I agree. Well said. Yeah. I read something recently about the reason fiction is important is because it allows you to tell very hard truths and explain really difficult things in a disguised fashion. And you're getting people to open up their minds, whether they mean to or not, and whether those lessons stick or not is, of course, a matter for every individual and in every individual circumstance. But it gives you that opportunity. So I like that very much.
And a safe way to talk about it too, unless you get really heated debate going. But yes, I mean that's a great point.
Oh, well, thank you. Swara, what is your next one?
I really love the episode Rebel Assault, in which we get to see my favorite Rebels character and one of my favorite Star Wars characters, period, Hera, lead an assault on Lothal, or at least the Imperial blockade on Lothal. And
X-Wings.
On X-Wings, exactly. And y'all, I just want to let you know, I love Hera so much. She is, in my opinion, I mean, it is just my opinion, of course, although it's a truth I hold to dearly. She is the best pilot in all of Star Wars. I think she is absolutely,
I think that's fair. Well, Pablo said that as well, by the way.
I think Pablo said that as well, exactly. And who knows better than he, right? So,
he has spoken.
He has spoken. So really, I suppose the moment from this episode was getting to see her and her Rebel Strike team go through, again, the Imperial blockade, and like being able to do all of their amazing maneuvers. And even though they do kind of end up defeated and Hera crashing on Lothal, it is still just a really great, endearing moment for Hera fans to see her in an X-Wing, to see her do these amazing, again, maneuvers and stunts, and really just like, again,
a lot of hand-to-hand combat for her.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of hand-to-hand combat too. it just like was really, it almost like felt validating to really see this, to see like her depth of skill. And I mean that, and I believe it was, the season 3 B-Wing episode are two of my favorites.
Wings of the Masters.
Wings of the Masters. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I like, or sorry, I think there's a plane flying overhead. Apologies.
It was a B-Wing.
It was a B-Wing. Exactly. That's a B-Wing flying
well
over.
Timed, for it. Nice.
You
really brought your A game.
Thank you, Dan. So I just like really love her as a character, and whenever we get to see her be the amazing pilot she is, it sounds cheesy, but literally my heart flies just like Hera does. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if you saw the StarWars.com had a top Rebels moments, and that was the one that for the whole series, and that was the one that I wrote about.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, check it out because I find that scene to be very metaphorical about her character. I think you'll like it. In fact, I'd love for you to read it and tell me what you think.
Yeah, absolutely.
But speaking of that, I did an article which is actually my number 3 point, and it's about World Between Worlds. That episode for me, that entire episode, was the most stunned I've ever been watching a Star Wars anything since the end of The Empire Strikes Back in 1980. Honestly, like when Ezra reaches in and pulls Ahsoka out, I was so stunned and so happy and just so shocked. And it's very nice, especially when you teach fiction and you're one of my jobs is to analyze story. And so I feel like I'm not surprised very often because, there's really basically 5 or 6 plot points that are recycled constantly. A lot of people have argued that. Yeah, 7. Yeah. And so to be surprised and genuinely just enraptured by something was so wonderful. And I just thought it was so brave. It was so smart. And actually I watched the commentary, Dave's commentary on that episode the other day, which we'll talk about more in the review later in the show. But when they talk about this, it's pretty cool to hear how he explains how this really doesn't change the physics of Star Wars all that much. And it's a brilliant thing. So I highly encourage you to check that out. So that's my number 3. Let's go ahead and take our first break, and we will finish this conversation at the end of the show, to be sure, because I've still got a couple of big points to bring up, as do Swara and Angela. But for now, let's take our break. And when we come back, Ashley Eckstein will join us. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Coffee with Kenobi. Oh, pass the cream, would you?
Looking to catch up on the latest Star Wars books? Try listening to them on audio. Featuring sound effects and music directly from the movies, Star Wars audiobooks are the definitive listening experience. From brand new audiobooks such as Thrawn Alliances and Most Wanted to our blockbuster movie tie-in editions, you'll have plenty to keep you entertained. Visit penguinrandomhouseaudio.com/Star Wars for sample clips and to start listening now. None of Coffee with Kenobi is possible without our amazing CWK Patreon family contributors. A huge thank you to Ben Elkington, Rebecca Raven, Dennis Keithley, Terry Lee, Wayne Booker, Aaron Harris, Chris Skavarka, Angela Sauce, Mediocre Jedi, Tim Bungaroth, Christo Hading, Chris Metz, LJ Souter, Thea Selby, Jeff Ellis, Daz Davies, Christian Dale, Jason Hall, Brian McKinney, Connie Shee, Mike Audette, Jared Cantor, BJ Smith, Eric Struthers, Nick Dico, and Mark Suter. Being a Patreon contributor means you get access to CWK Pour Over. That is our weekly show hosted by myself, Tom Gross, and Corey Clubb. And it's something where we like to just kind of throw ideas on the wall and see what sticks and go from there. And for this week's show, we talked about our favorite John Williams individual songs, as well as our favorite overall soundtracks from his incredible pantheon of music. Here's a clip from this week's show. I thought you had yours. I thought you had yours.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I would have to go with probably like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay.
I don't think
I don't sound so sure about that.
But only because I don't own I have all the Star Wars soundtrack. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe let me think a little more and let me hear yours.
There's a lot of them that move me for various reasons, but I just know for me, soundtracks are hard to listen to because when I listen to them, I replayed the film in my mind,
right?
And I replay the film scenes and sequences in my mind. And I'd like to watch movies, not a lot because I want to keep them fresh, and I always want to be impacted by them. Now, Star Wars and Empire threw that out the window because I've seen them so many times. But I try to limit my viewing. I try to sort of discipline myself on that. And a soundtrack makes it harder to do because I relive the films. That being said, there is one soundtrack that I never feel that way about, and it is Raiders of the Lost Ark. That is such an incredibly powerful score. I mean, top to bottom, it's also my favorite movie. I've said that a bunch of times. I remember when the CD came out for the entire film score, not just like excerpts, because sometimes with a lot of scores, there'll be big pieces of music left out. But when I bought the one that went through the whole thing, when I went home and played video games with my friends, because I was out of college then, I put that on and I just listened to it while we were playing video games. I even turned down the volume on the video games, or like throughout the day I would play it. Or when I'm, even now, like when I mow, if I'm caught up on all my podcasts that I listen to, I'll listen to the Raiders score while I'm mowing the lawn. I think it's great. I just love it so much. I mean, the indie theme, obviously, the truck chase is probably my favorite track on that album. I love that one so much.
Okay, so I got a couple of things to say about that.
Okay, I'm ready.
I love that you listen to the indie soundtrack while mowing. So what I want to know is, do you ever catch yourself walking quicker, or like, I don't know, are you moving to the?
Okay,
I'd love to see this.
Every single time. If you enjoyed that clip or want to hear more about what we're going to say about our John Williams scores, or want to hear our back catalog of the CWK pour-overs, it costs $5 a month, and you can find it on patreon.com/coffeewithkenobi. And in addition to our CWK pour-over, we have access to CWK Lens, which has a lot of behind-the-scenes video and images, as well as chances to get coffee mugs, t-shirts, and a whole lot more. So again, be sure to go to www.patreon.com/coffeewithkenobi and help support our podcast. And after you become a member of CWK's Patreon family, you can go to onenationcoffee.com, which is the official brew of Coffee with Kenobi. They have a subscription service where you can be guaranteed to have the coffee you want delivered to you each and every week, or every 2 weeks, or however you want to do it. There are a lot of options there. And plus, when you go to onenationcoffee.com, you can put in the code Kenobi10 to get 10% off your first order. Be sure to go to www.onenationcoffee.com to get the official brew of Coffee with Kenobi. Ashley Eckstein joins us. Ashley, thank you so much for coming back to Coffee with Kenobi. Great to have you. Oh, absolutely. Likewise. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the return of Clone Wars. I was lucky enough to be in the room when it was announced, and I know what an electric atmosphere that was. What was that moment like for you, both as an actor and as a fan?
Oh, that moment at San Diego Comic-Con when we announced that the Clone Wars was coming back will go down as one of the favorite moments so far in my life. It was amazing. It was incredible. Still I get chills when I think about it. Obviously I knew, I found out in January that Star Wars: The Clone Wars was coming back, and it was just surreal. I mean, it was, one of those things where I honestly thought that, it was never going to happen. I literally thought Clone Wars coming back was impossible. And so when I got the news that Clone Wars, in fact, was coming back, it really was the impossible becoming possible, or a dream coming true. And so when it was actually announced to the fans and we were able to keep it such a surprise and keep the secret for so long, that room was just electric. There was just shock in the room. And I burst into tears. I know there's photos out there and video, but I literally burst into tears. It was just absolutely amazing.
You could absolutely feel the electricity, and when they showed the different clone helmets and they pan back, I remember thinking, oh, this must be, maybe they're doing like a spinoff with Rex, or I didn't know. But then when Ahsoka shows up and she turns and talks to Anakin, for me, honestly, that's when it hit me. Oh my gosh, it's coming back. It was spectacular.
Yeah, I think even for me, I knew it was coming back, but at that moment it became real for me. It finally set in, seeing it even myself, because we record the lines but before the animation is done. They do the animation to our voices. So for me, it always comes full circle when I see the animation, because what I envision in my head is never what it actually looks like on screen. And I hadn't seen that trailer yet. When the fans saw the trailer, that was the first time I saw the trailer too. And it was just surreal. Like, there's no other word for it. It was just, that moment was pure magic.
And I love that Amy, because Amy is, of course, a great friend of mine on the show, but I love that Amy had no idea and that she was as stunned as any of us.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's so rare nowadays that a secret of that magnitude is able to be kept. And we were so worried about it. We were so worried about, it leaking or somebody finding out. And so everyone did a really great job of keeping the secret. And so the fact that we were able to pull it off and that nobody was really expecting it. Were you expecting it? Did you have any clue that it was going to happen?
No, not at all. That morning I went to the Hasbro breakfast and we were getting excited. And the Clone Wars panel was definitely the thing I was most excited about for the con. But then I got there and I thought, well, maybe they'll announce a novel. And I was just happy, and that was fine. And of course, in your heart, you wish you could see it, because Star Wars is such a visual medium anyway. And, E.K. Johnston's novel of Ahsoka, and about the Return to Mandalore. But I always thought it would be great to see the end of that, because I would love some closure. And I thought, well, maybe someday. But when that happened, I truly was absolutely stunned. And I love that it didn't leak at all, because that made it more surprising. And speaking of surprising, let's go ahead and detour a little bit. The episode A World Between Worlds for Star Wars Rebels really changed things. What do you think about Ahsoka as far as her perspective during that fantastic sequence where Ezra pulls her out of time, she saves him from Palpatine, and then returns to Malachor?
Oh, goodness. Well, I will tell you, in terms of what that moment represents for Star Wars, I certainly do not feel qualified to speak on it. And, there's nobody else that can really speak for what that means than Dave Filoni. Because I just think he's such a genius when it comes to telling Star Wars stories. But I will say in that moment, and Dave and I did talk about this when I was recording the episode, what Ahsoka very quickly realizes is that, this is not a fun little time portal that you can just jump in and out of and change the course of time. She very quickly realizes, that, you can't just change the course of time. You can't just change fate so easily, because by pulling somebody out of a moment, you're not, there's consequences. Let's say Ezra goes and saves Kanan. Well, if Ezra saves Kanan, then they all die. And that's in that moment she has to, convince him of that. And so, Ahsoka realizes this is not a game that they can just play with and jump in and out of time. And so that's really, I feel like, what I can speak to. And I think it just, obviously, and selfishly, Ahsoka lives, and thanks to, really Kanan, kind of taking Ezra to that moment, and Ezra, pulling Ahsoka out. But, what that means for Star Wars and the bigger implications, even I don't know, and really only Dave Filoni can speak to that.
Oh, certainly. It's that surprise factor in Star Wars that I love personally. It's a really, really cool thing. So let's go ahead and talk about the end of the series. The design of Ahsoka, when we see she's going to, she recruits Sabine to find Ezra, and I love that the three of them have this tight connection between one another, so it seems perfect. So talk about the design and the knowledge that she has survived the events of the original trilogy.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing to see Ahsoka at the end of Star Wars Rebels. And I have to tell you, I was just as surprised as everyone else. Dave Filoni, he works with us on a need-to-know basis. So unless we need to know it for our performance, we often don't. know it. And so since Ahsoka had no lines at the end of Rebels, I had no clue what was going to happen. I actually found out on Twitter when when the rest of the world watched the Star Wars Rebels episode. I was stuck in a hotel without Disney XD. So I couldn't even watch the episode. And so all of a sudden, I'm looking on Twitter and I see Ahsoka in this amazing white robe, looking awesome and fierce and mysterious. And I'm like, what the heck? So I was thrilled that, she was alive, and to hear that she went off with Sabine to go find Ezra. And then obviously I eventually watched the episode. But I'm just as much of a fan of Ahsoka as anyone else. And I'm just in awe of her and what she represents and who she is and the choices she makes. And so I'm thrilled. I know nothing about her new costume. I know nothing about where she went and where she's off to. So, as a matter of fact, when I was on my book tour, everyone kept on asking me. They're like, oh, do you know anything about the future of Ahsoka and where she went? And I could honestly tell people the truth, because I did know about Clone Wars at that time, but that was in Ahsoka's past. So I was careful to say, oh gosh, your guess is as good as mine. I know nothing about Ahsoka's future, because I don't know about Ahsoka's future. Right. I just know a little bit about Ahsoka's past.
And honestly, I love so much, because I don't want to know either. I like knowing when Lucasfilm is ready to tell me, when I can see it on the screen. And Coffee with Kenobi is absolutely anti-spoiler. That you brought up your book, it's your universe, you have the power to make it happen, which is a wonderful title. But recently, our CWK newsman Tom Gross's daughter Kaylee let me glance at her copy without, of course, me looking at anything that she wrote down, because I respect her privacy. But as an educator, I love that you have moments of writing reflection throughout this book. So talk about the design of this wonderful and inspirational book.
Oh, goodness. Thank you. For me, I was never very good at keeping a diary growing up. I would start out with a diary and I'd write for a couple days and then I'd lose track. But I always had a journal with me. And my journal, there was never any rhyme or reason to it. But it was full of my favorite quotes. It was full of my sketches. It was full of my checklists, to-do lists, thoughts, dreams, ideas, all sorts of things. And so since this book is an advice book, it's meant to be, the reader's book. So even though I'm sharing my journey, it's really meant to be, a journey for the reader and their journey. And so I wanted my book to represent a journal, just like I always carried a journal, and still to this day carry a journal. I hope that the reader will use my book as their journal as well. And as they're reading the book, and, there's prompts and there's places to write throughout it. And I hope that, it'll be one of those books that you can constantly go back to, constantly reference, constantly go back to the writing
definitely.
And add and adjust and change. And, it's not one of those books that you just kind of read once and then you put away. I hope it's meant to be a roadmap for the reader on how to make your dreams come true, on how to dream it and do it. And making your dreams come true is constantly a work in progress. And so I hope that they'll treat the book as that, as a work in progress, and go back to it, and change and be inspired and have advice and it's a work in progress.
That's right. And it's so true. I mean, as adults, we know that you learn these lessons, but sometimes you have to go back and revisit them in different ways. And the act of writing something down and reflecting really does bring it into your brain in a different way. So that truly is something that does help, and it is inspirational, as was the SDCC fashion show. I was there. What an amazing event that was. And I know your time is short, but I just wanted to get your thoughts real quick on that experience.
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you so much for coming. The Her Universe fashion show was just really special this year and really exciting. The theme of the show was milestones, because, it was the anniversary of so many, amazing things. That my dress was inspired by The Nightmare Before Christmas, and it was the 25th anniversary of, that iconic film. And then the 10th anniversary of Star Wars, The Clone Wars, which, we had a surprise guest on stage with me. Matt Lanter and Dee Bradley Baker joined me on stage, and, to celebrate the announcement of Clone Wars coming back, celebrate the anniversary. And, they also helped me model. They modeled the Clone Wars collection for me. So Matt, Dee, James, Kat, and Sam came into our studio, and they so kindly modeled the pieces inspired by their characters. And then we had the Doctor, a milestone of Doctor Who coming back, and Jodie Whittaker surprised the fans on stage. And then, most importantly, it was the 5th anniversary of the Her Universe fashion show, and we were celebrating 5 years of the fashion show happening. And I say most importantly because, to me, Her Universe, while it's a merchandise line, more importantly, it's a community. And, my hope from day one of starting Her Universe was that regardless of if you ever buy anything, I really don't care if you ever buy anything from Her Universe. I just want fans to come and join the conversation and feel like Her Universe is a community for them, and that they're a part of something, and that you're a part of something. And I always wanted to provide opportunity for fans. And so the Her Universe Fashion Show is just that. It's a design competition show where we brought together 24 designers, and they competed for the opportunity to win the chance to design a collection with Her Universe to be sold in Hot Topic. And we also actually, for the first time ever, held a junior designer competition in celebration of the 20th anniversary of the Powerpuff Girls. And we actually brought together 4 winners of the junior design competition. So we had 28 designers on the stage that were given the opportunity to design and create. And, several of them, whether they win or not, they go on to have the opportunity to design professionally. And, that's really what just is my why I do what I do, is to build this community, to build a world where hopefully it's a bully-free zone where, we support each other, we uplift each other, we celebrate each other. And then, especially at the fashion show, where we provide opportunity for, fans and designers to do what they love and to do it professionally. Because I'm not here today with Her Universe if other people didn't give me the opportunity. So it's something I'm very grateful for.
Oh, as are we for your positivity and your excellent example. And I know as a parent and as an educator that it is the example is where people learn and grow and change. So obviously you don't do it for thanks, you do it just because of who you are. But nevertheless, thank you so much for that.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for being an educator and a teacher as well. My mom was a teacher. My mother-in-law was a teacher. Father-in-law was a teacher. And I say, teachers are real heroes. Teachers are, real Jedi Knights. And I just like to thank teachers whenever I get the opportunity because, really just you're selfless and, you're passing on are what I call dream warriors. With this book, I'm asking people to be dream warriors with me. And a dream warrior is somebody who fiercely goes out there and makes dreams come true, whether they're yours or whether they're somebody else's. So I look at teachers and I think you're all dream warriors. So thank you so much for being a teacher.
My goodness, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm going to use that this year in my classroom for sure about being a dream warrior. That's good because we need to open up those minds to that there are avenues that they can explore. We also appreciate you coming back on Coffee with Kenobi. Where can listeners reach out and ask you a question or just say hello?
Oh, goodness. Thank you for having me back. And we can continue the conversation online on social media. I'm at Her Universe on Instagram, at Her Universe on Twitter, Her Universe on Facebook, and then heruniverse.com. We have a blog, and definitely come join the conversation. And oftentimes you are speaking to me on social media. I have 2 amazing cast members that help me out with social media, but for the most part, It's, people are like, oh, well, can you pass along a message to Ashley? And I'm like, well, you're talking to me. this is Ashley. So I encourage people to come and say hello and ask questions and join the conversation.
Wonderful. Ashley Eckstein, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, Tom will have the latest Star Wars news. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Greetings. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Looking to catch up on the latest Star Wars books? Try listening to them on audio, featuring sound effects, top-notch narration, and music directly from the movies. Star Wars audiobooks are the definitive listening experience. From Han Solo to C-3PO to Admiral Akbar, you'll recognize all of your favorite characters. Listen to movie tie-ins like The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens, to book titles such as Thrawn Alliances and Most Wanted, to classic audiobooks like William Shakespeare's Star Wars. With Star Wars audiobooks, you'll have plenty of Star Wars listening to keep you entertained. Visit penguinrandomhouseaudio.com/Star Wars for sample clips and to start listening now. I got home today from running some errands, and waiting for me on my front porch was the latest box from Harry's Razors, which is always great because I was waiting for my latest blades. I got some face wash from them that I'm excited to try, and I ordered some extra razors for the boys. And it's cool because Harry's Razors is a quality product that I count on, and that's what I love about them. They have this awesome close shave that you get. It's smooth, it's comfortable. I love the weight of the razor handle. It's just a great design. It's a fantastic product. Harry stands behind the quality of their blades, but they know that switching razors isn't an easy decision. So they have created a trial offer, which you can get by going to harrys.com/CWK family. Harry's founders were fed up with overpaying for expensive razors with unnecessary features. They knew a great shave comes down to great blades, made with sharp, durable steel that lasts, which is why they bought a factory that's been making some of the highest quality blades in the world for over 95 years. By selling directly to you over the internet, Harry's can offer their blades at a price much lower than the leading brand. Just $2 per blade compared to $4 or more. And you get a quality guarantee. If you don't love your shave, let Harry's know within 30 days and they'll give you a full refund. Now I'm going to give you the details of this trial offer. Get a $13 value trial set that comes with everything you need for a close, comfortable shave. A weighted ergonomic handle, 5-blade razor with a lubricating strip and trimmer blade, rich lathering shave gel, and a travel blade cover. Listeners of my show can redeem their trial set at harrys.com/CWK family. Make sure you go to harrys.com/CWK family to redeem your offer and let them know I sent you to help support the show. We're back, and Tom is back. Now, of course, last week we heard Tom's amazing interview on Star Wars Maker Lab and with the authors there, and that was great, by the way. You did a fantastic job with that.
Oh, that was so much fun. They were a great interview, plus it was a great book. My daughters and I did some of those experiments, and they were so much fun.
It was fun to listen to as well, and I could just hear the enthusiasm, and it was great. So thank you for that. But now we're back to the news segment of the program. So we'll still hear the dulcet tones of Tom's voice, but Tom has got some news for us. Go ahead, take it away.
I do. Some big news has been coming out about the new Disney streaming service this week. Disney executive Ricky Strauss has been given creative oversight of content on the service, and a couple bits of news that come from this for Star Wars fans is that the newly and dramatically announced Clone Wars final 12 episodes, those will be presented on the streaming service, but also the live-action Star Wars series that is planned to cover 10 episodes produced by Jon Favreau. To take place 7 years after the events of The Return of the Jedi, will be giving a whopping budget, according to the New York Times, a budget that is roughly $100 million. Now, to put that into perspective of other material hitting the streaming service, Disney employees have reported that several original movies are planned that will have budgets in the range of $20 to $60 million each. So Disney is making a massive investment in the streaming service as the number of cable cutters continues to grow at about 22 to 33% each year. It is no surprise that they're making a huge investment in the Star Wars franchise.
Well, that was always the big thing with the original proposed live-action series, that was going to have an underground feel, or like sort of a, an underground feel to it with the crime denizens of the Star Wars universe. And they always just said, well, what kind of budget can we do with this? So now clearly that is not an issue if this is in fact true. And the New York Times is a pretty reputable source, I would think. So this is very encouraging because I know Jon Favreau is a huge Star Wars fan. He's already done a lot of voice work, in Solo, and then of course in Clone Wars because he was pre-Vizsla. So this is great, and it's encouraging because that quality is still going to be there. And if it's anything like the rebooted Battlestar Galactica, it's going to be nothing short of spectacular.
It's some big shoes to fill. That's a big budget.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was reading something earlier that it's approximately the same budget for Netflix's The Crown. Has anyone seen The Crown here?
Oh, it's brilliant.
It's so good. It's so good.
It's
and so, I saw a lot of people sort of making a big deal over the fact that it is $100 million. Yeah, that is a big budget. It is a big deal, but not necessarily unheard of. And It really does seem like they're going all out on this show, whatever it's going to be about.
There are lots of rumors.
Yeah, I know that it takes place after approximately 3 years after Return of the Jedi.
That's
so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think the $100 million is a definite investment. Yeah, I agree with you, Swara, that it's not unheard of, but definitely showing an investment and showing an interest in making this something special.
Well, also, by the way, Tom's salary for being the newsman on CWK, so that's kind of interesting. What a parallel.
Well, I wasn't going to, brag or anything, but... Sure. Well, we'll move on. Hey, Gen Con, the largest tabletop gaming convention in the United States, took place last weekend in Indianapolis, and Fantasy Flight came aboard with some Star Wars game announcements. First, just weeks after the announcement of the Return of the Clone Wars, Fantasy Flight announced that the Clone War era will come to life in both the Star Wars X-Wing miniatures game as well as Star Wars Legion miniatures game that was previewed at Gen Con last year. While no details were revealed regarding Legion, the X-Wing miniatures revealed at Gen Con were the Sith Infiltrator and the Jedi Starfleeter, both to join the fleet. Then the news that blew everyone's mind was the display and announcement of the Armada in the Armada edition of the Executor Super Star Destroyer. This expansion pack brings the might of the Empire to the table with a new class of ships to the Armada game. According to Fantasy Flight, the new class of ships is called huge ships. Very creative. The Executor,
how did they come up with that? Brilliant.
I don't know. The Executor is the largest ship in the Armada miniatures game, coming in at just over 24 inches tip to end. Now, for those who play, the expansion comes with 4 unique ship sheets, a variety of tokens, 24 upgrade cards, and classic commanders like Admiral Piet, and yes, Emperor Palpatine. This expansion will be sure to strike fear into your opponents on the Armada battlefield.
So you and I were talking about this earlier after our latest Dungeons and Dragons session, and you were talking about scale. Tell us about the scale of that.
Oh, I should have looked that up before we came on, but so my numbers may not be right, but it's we're talking ballpark here.
Sure.
Now, in the X-Wing game, ships are on a scale of 1 to 270. So now there's a little bit of difference in ratio between the Armada game and the X-Wing game, but someone was pointing out that if you were to move this Executor Star Destroyer into the X-Wing game, it would be almost 400 feet long. Now, it will probably do the math, and I hope you do, and correct my numbers or do the math yourself since I don't have it right in front of me. But so these little X-Wings on the X-Wing game, I mean, they're inches big. So imagine the Executor being 400 feet long.
Oh,
it's massive.
I'm no math major, but that's a lot.
Yes.
That is.
Yeah,
would that cover like a whole room or something?
What would you
you wouldn't be able to play it. Yeah. It would not be part of a miniatures game.
you have to park it in a garage.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd probably need
hangar.
Yeah, you would.
Yes, it's like a small airplane.
Yeah.
It just shows you the scale of, and that is probably small compared to Snoke's ship too, by the way.
But on the scale, they do have an image of the game pieces, and the Executor compared to the Star Destroyers in the Armada game, it would take about the length of 4 Star Destroyers. So on the gameplay on the table, it is a massive piece. And I do not play Armada. I do know, and I've played X-Wing before, and I'm guessing that Armada is somewhere in the same range and scale of how the game works. But there are massive amounts of attacks on this Executor. I think on its turn, from what I read, it looks like it gets almost 8 attacks in one turn. If I read it right. So, I mean, when you put this thing down on the battlefield, you bet, if you're going up against it, you better have some, Admiral Akbar better be sitting by you, because it's going to take some creativity to defeat this thing.
Wow.
It's not going to be easy, but when you mention Star Destroyers and the length and size of them, that kind of leads to our next story in a way, because we're going to talk a little bit about Boba Fett. And I'm thinking about the great sequence in The Empire Strikes Back when they escape, when Han escapes and floats away with the garbage. But that's, of course, when Boba Fett is there and he skulks after them in the Slave One. But there's some big Boba Fett news, isn't there?
There is, and what a great scene. The man who mystified us, grabbed our attention, and made bounty hunters cool, Jeremy Bullock, announced on the Boba Fett fan club website his retirement from convention appearances this week. In his letter, he starts by saying, quote, "It is with a heavy heart that I've decided to stop attending conventions and hang up the Fett helmet." He goes on to say that the day he walked onto the set of The Empire Strikes Back in 1979, it changed his life in such a wonderful way. And he thanks his fans for over 20 years of traveling to conventions, and that he and his wife, Maureen, will miss all of the fans. And I can only say that I wish him a long and happy retirement, and that he inspired me to take a new look at gunslinging villains in a Western genre. And if you would like to see the entire letter to his fans, check out the Boba Fett fan club website, or hop on over to the Coffee with Kenobi website. It's all right there for you.
Yeah, I never had the good fortune to actually get a chance to talk with him face to face, but everyone who has, I know Mark Newbold is actually pretty good friends with Jeremy Bullock. He's just a prince of a guy. So, I mean, good for him, as you said, Tom, so well. Good for him to be able to just sort of retire and just sort of enjoy. Mm-hmm. Having to conventions are great. I mean, they're fun. I've certainly gone to a lot of them, especially recently. But it is work, and it is time consuming, and especially if you're there, that's a lot of hands to shake, and again, that's not like that is something arduous, but I respect so much. He's like, you know what? I think it's time. So good for him.
Yeah, good for him. Just like you said, Dan, conventions can be very intensive. We all go to them all the time, and we may feel burned out by the end of the weekend we've gone. I can only imagine how it is for an actor.
Absolutely.
Whether it's Jeremy,
because you got to be on the whole time. Exactly. Whether it's
you're Jeremy Bullock, whether you're Mark Hamill, whether you're any other celebrity going, it's really intensive. So good for him. And, he's like 73 years old. So may he have a long and happy retirement.
That's right. Well, very, very good, Tom. Thank you so much. I like the balance here. We've got a lot of fun things going on. And I also appreciate you bringing the game information too, because sometimes that doesn't fall on my radar right away. So very good. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Let's go ahead and take another break. And when we come back, we will return to our top 5 moments from Star Wars Rebels Season 4. And I'm going to give you my review of the Season 4 Blu-ray. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Coffee, tea, or me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's Coffee with Kenobi.
Looking to catch up on the latest Star Wars books? Try listening to them on audio. Featuring sound effects and music directly from the movies, Star Wars audiobooks are the definitive listening experience. From brand new audiobooks such as Thrawn Alliances and Most Wanted to our blockbuster movie tie-in editions, you'll have plenty to keep you entertained. Visit penguinrandomhouseaudio.com/Star Wars for sample clips and to start listening now. One Nation Coffee is the official brew of Coffee with Kenobi. You've got this amazing company with the best coffee I have ever had, truly. They just released something on Instagram where they show how they roast and prepare and package their coffee, and it's a quick video, but it just shows you the care they put into this, and they know their stuff. It's amazing. Whenever I travel, I truly miss this coffee. It's the best I've ever had. It smells amazing and tastes even better. So be sure to go to www.onenationcoffee.com to set up a coffee subscription and help your morning get started off the right way. As you are getting ready to prepare for Star Wars Celebration Chicago, you're going to need an airline, most likely. You're going to need a hotel. You're going to need to do a lot of things, which is why I suggest to use the official travel agency of Coffee with Kenobi, MEI, and Mouse Fan Travel. They have signature service and expert advice to help you maximize your vacation time and dollar. I use them all the time, and you know I do a lot of traveling for this show, and they are the absolute best. Plus, if you want to go to Disney World, which is a pretty great place, they can help you plan everything, including food, which is the best rides to go on what days and what times. It's really fantastic. So be sure to go to www.mousefantravel.com today and let them know Coffee with Kenobi sent you. We are back, and before we get back to our conversation with Angela and Swara, I'm going to give you my review of the Star Wars Rebels Season 4 Blu-ray, a truly worthy companion to this amazing final season of the spectacular show. Now, when it starts up, you've got the Blu-ray menu, and the music kind of threw me. It's not bad, it's wonderful. It's the end credit music from the films, which you don't often hear. I don't think we've ever heard of that particular track on any episodes of Star Wars Rebels, so I was a little bit confused about that, but not in a bad way, just kind of like, oh, that's an interesting choice. So naturally, I went right to the extras, of course. The first one is called Ghosts of Legend, and it basically goes through each of the characters and gives a little snippet about the end of each of their respective journeys, at least on the show. The first one is in the beginning. It goes over basically the entire series as far as ideas for why the series started, and it shows clips from the first episode and then all the way to the very last one. And Dave Filoni says something interesting. No shock, he always says something interesting. For this one, he says he was not wanting to be tied down to history and timelines, which is why he was so excited about starting something brand new. He absolutely loved Clone Wars, but this was something which he could get a fresh take on and just kind of put his own spin on things without having this backlog, this back catalog of this immense mythology. He could start to craft his own, which I think is really cool, and it definitely shows through. So as I said, they go through each character, and I'm just going to go through just quick little highlights that I thought popped out at me when I watched this the first time. The first one is The Lost Boy, which is, of course, about Ezra Bridger. And the highlight that I thought here is that I think it was Freddie who says that Kanan and Ezra need each other, which is why they're so important for one another. And it's a very healthy relationship where they balance each other out and learn from each other, which I agree, and it's one of the things I love about those two anyway. Next one's called The Fallen Knight, which is, of course, about Kanan Jarrus. And Kanan loves Ezra, which makes him a better teacher. He cares and he's invested in a healthy, practical way that brings out the best in him, as I said. And Ezra chooses his family over fear at the end, which is why the Loth Wolves don't eat him, basically, at the end of Season 4. The next one's called The Captain here, which is very cool and distinguished. It says that they're together but apart when the show starts, and they're referring, of course, to what's going on with Kanan and Hera's burgeoning relationship. Thank you, Craig Dickinson. And they go on to talk about how wonderful she is, and everyone seems to agree because she's a fantastic character. Then they have one called The Broken Girl, Sabine. I didn't really like that title. I don't think she's broken. I guess at the beginning she was sort of broken or fractured, but broken to me implies that you can't be fixed or mended or heal. And that's not the case with Sabine, and I know they don't think that, the creators don't, but I just don't like the word choice there. But anyway, they wanted to be sure that she wasn't a romantic lead or a side character, and she's more personal than maybe any of them, because for her it's not something that happens in a galaxy far, far away, but something that happens in everyday life that they experience, and that was what they wanted to use with Sabine, why they thought she was an important character. And again, there was very much a slow burn with her, which was well documented, and we talked about on Rebels Reactions when we first started doing the show. But she ultimately becomes a tour de force and a feature character in this entire franchise. Then they have the Survivor Zeb, and the main thing they talk about there is that great arc with Zeb and Callus and how much they grow. Where at the beginning they are trying to kill each other, and then at the end of that series, they're brothers, and he takes Callus back to his home planet to show him, hey, there are more Lasans, and you're going to help me rebuild this culture, and you're going to help me because you're my brother. And I thought that was lovely. I really like that about them. And then they have the veteran Chopper, and it basically just says, we love Chopper. He's funny. He's more like a cat than a dog, that kind of thing. Nothing new, nothing insightful there, but they do feature the moment when he reaches out and holds Hera's hand when Kanan passes, and that was lovely. Now, the end of Rebels. At the end, they have something called the end, which is basically they talk about that huge montage of that awesome epilogue that showcases that this series is over, but it's not over, which I love. So it says at the end of Rebels is the beginning of another story, more focused on Sabine. That's all that Dave says, but that's a nice tease of what we can hopefully look forward to someday. Now, there's one thing called Force of Rebellion. I wrote down a lot of stuff, so you're going to hear me turn in this paper because I took a lot of notes. But this is basically Dave talking for 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, about the Force. And it's like a master class, and I rewound. It's not a VHS. Well, I guess it is rewind. You rewind a Blu-ray, I suppose. And I kept listening for key things and trying to write stuff down. And it's like being in a master class in Star Wars. I mean, I say that a lot about some of these creators, and because it's true. A few things he points out. The Force isn't a weapon or some sort of a show. It's supposed to be something that helps to enhance character, but it's not the focal point, which I think is good and important. Otherwise, people are superhuman like Neo in the second Matrix film, and they don't want that. So the wolves, he describes the wolves as a force of nature. They want nothing to do with Ezra if he's afraid, as I mentioned before, but they are just part of the nature of the Force. He doesn't give a lot of detail about what's everything about them, and he flat out says, look, I don't want to connect all the dots. I don't want to fill it all in. Some of that is for you to sort of think about. And I love that because it gives them creative range and also allows us to add our own analysis to it, which is an important part and a big reason why we even have Star Wars podcasts in the first place. Then we talk about A World Between Worlds, which is probably my second favorite episode besides Twin Suns. He says that's not a portal. Okay, it's not a portal that is sort of a deus ex machina. Ahsoka is smart enough to know she can't go to Ezra's door because it will destroy the natural order of things. So she has to go back to her own path, which is another lovely metaphor where you can maybe learn and pick and choose from certain things, but you have to follow your own path. And Ahsoka is so wise. I don't know that she's as wise as Master Yoda, but I think you'd be hard-pressed to find someone as wise and intelligent as Ahsoka. Maybe she is more wise than Yoda. I don't know. I mean, she certainly has some interesting different ways of handling the Clone Wars than Yoda did. Now, they're on very much the opposite side of the spectrum as far as leadership, but it's really cool. He also says, again, the Force can't solve everything because, again, it can't just be the be-all, end-all because then there's no conflict. Then it's nothing but, let's use the Force and move on to the next episode, which would be really boring, to be honest. Then he also says the Force is selfless and the Force is knowledge, which I thought was cool. He talks later about Ezra not saving Kanan in that portal, and he says that's the nice thing that Ezra understands that Anakin doesn't, is that Anakin takes agency from Padme. Like, he takes fate into his own hands. Doesn't allow her to choose or allow her the chance to try to survive or fight back or do whatever Padme is going to do. She's very, very, very capable. Obviously, she's a tour de force in her own right. But Anakin takes that away from her, which is another reason of why he is selfish. He is selfish, and that, of course, leads to the tragic downfall of these characters, but is the catalyst for so much of what makes Star Wars Star Wars. Naturally, the Blu-ray has beautiful sound and beautiful picture. I did watch the commentary on World Between Worlds because I wanted to hear about it. And it's amazing. It's Dave and one of the sound engineers talking about how they created some of the scenes and moments and stuff that they were going to put in, as well as stuff that they added in at the last moment that they thought would flesh out the story and make it a lot stronger. And it's great. I mean, I only watched one of them at the time of this recording, but I'm definitely going to dive in and look at them all. But I love hearing him talk. It's like he's sitting next to you and he's just candidly talking about what moved him creating this episode, things that he liked, things that he would have tweaked at the end and did. And it's just great. It just shows you the love and care that goes into these episodes. And it just reminded me how much I'm really, really going to miss this series. I'm glad that it had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I'm glad it's there for posterity for me to always go back to. But I absolutely love Rebels, and this is a perfect love letter to the end of this series. So let's get back to our conversation with Angela and Swara about our top 5 moments from Rebels Season 4. And as promised, we are going to finish our top 5 moments from Star Wars Rebels Season 4. And again, another caveat, these are by no means the definitive ones. We may all change our minds in the next 10 seconds.
Absolutely.
Because there's so many wonderful things. It's very, very hard to pick them out, but it's cool hearing the two of you and what you are noticing as well. And it just sort of reinforces things that I've thought, but it also gives me new ideas I hadn't thought of before, which is why discourse among Star Wars fans is such a pleasant experience for me. So I thank you for that. Let's go ahead and go to number 4. Angela, you are up.
Okay. And again, in no particular order, just moments that have stood out as I went back to review season 4. I'm going to go with Fool's Hope as we near the end of the season. There are so many, just particularly at the beginning of the episode, these Clone Wars references that get tossed out there where we go in and we're looking for Rex's old crew and we're trying to gather up a few more members to help. And then we learn, this is not a formal mission. This is to help Ezra. I love just some of the commentary that went in there, and there was a lot of with the remaining clones and do we really want to do this? We've done this already. Are we sure we want to do this again? And Hondo appearing, piping in. The moment that he says that for that boy I would do anything, it just was so heartwarming to me.
Beautiful.
I just adored that. I just thought, oh my gosh, Hondo is just a pretty endearing little guy anyway. But that line it gave me goosebumps when we watched that. So I really liked that. Again, we got more Loth Wolves in this episode. I mean, I was at the point where I thought, oh man, where Ryder has gone and betrayed us all. And I was kind of stunned by that and devastated at the same time.
You really thought he did? You didn't think that was
it's one of those things I'm like, is it, isn't it? And so I tend to ride such an emotional wave when I watch things. I am 100% in it for, I'm writing it out. And so I feel these emotions as they come. And there was that moment of, oh my gosh, I can't believe, no, this can't be true. And thankfully they didn't pull it out too long. And we got the real gist behind what they were doing. And I was very relieved at that. I thought, surely not. You just have the battle with yourself mentally on whether that's actually happening. So I appreciated that as well. And I loved how the Loth Wolves came in, and that was a fantastic scene when Ezra was backed into the cave and kind of led Governor Price and everyone in there, and that was just part of the trap. And I thought that was a fantastic moment. I loved seeing that after such an intense ride the last few episodes, getting a little bit of release through the action in this one and seeing just a little bit of hope come out and see, hey, we're gaining some momentum, we're rolling towards the end. I think maybe there's a chance here things are going to go the way they need to. And so it was a nice release from all the tension that had been happening earlier in the previous episodes.
I love it. Yeah, that I'd forgotten about that moment, but that bit of dialogue from Hondo was pretty spectacular, and it also gave you that feel of, okay, this is the end, because talk about it, a moment of vulnerability is even more rare for Hondo. So that was cool.
Yes.
Swara, what's your next one?
I would say my next one is a moment from the episode 7, Kindred, in which Kanan is developing a deeper connection with the Loth Wolves. Specifically, I believe, he meets the White Loth Wolf, and I think, Angela, as you were saying earlier, Kanan this season, this is the pinnacle of his really giving himself to the will of the Force, and not, when we saw him at the beginning of the series, he was very scared. He didn't want to engage in the fight again. He didn't want to essentially be a Jedi again. But I believe that this arc in which he is speaking and communing with the wolves, it represents that sort of final test for him, that sort of final step for him to really give himself to the will of the Force.
And they've been trying to give him that, the pull as well. There were several points in previous episodes where the wolves were saying doom, and was that doom DOOM, or was it doom as in Caleb Doom? And it was really, they've been trying to drop those hints throughout.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what you think when you watch the Blu-ray extras.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
That's going to be addressed for you.
Absolutely.
The answer is there.
There's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just really loved the moment where he's communing with the White Wolf, and he really seems to be finally at peace, or like he's starting to get to some semblance of peace that, when his tragic ending, spoilers, happens, like he's content, and he isn't internally suffering anymore. So yeah, it's like hopeful in that sort of way, in a very sad way, but still hopeful.
Yeah, and I'm still very much in the Shakespearean school of I like tragedies because I think that they are very powerful and beautiful, and it's sort of refreshing in a way because they don't sugarcoat it. I mean, life isn't always clean. Often it's messy, but those gestures, those sacrifices, those examples of love are just, I think those are the things that I want, us to remember as a culture, as a people.
It was an incredible sacrifice. So true.
So my fourth one is, and you both already talked about it beautifully, so I don't really have too much to add to other than what you said, but I just wrote down Mon Mothma's coming out party, because we get a lot of Mon Mothma in this season, and the moment when she really loses her temper at Saw, I just remember feeling like it was such an electric moment, because she still wasn't in control when she wasn't in control, which I thought was great. And then that beautiful moment on the bridge when she's addressing the rebellion, all of the rebels are coming together, and just the way, the grandeur, the gravitas, the poise that she exhibits. I just remember thinking, I love this character. I mean, I always thought, okay, Mon Mothma, she's that lady in Return of the Jedi. I mean, when you're not, in 1983, I was, I think, 11 years old, so you don't really think much about it because you want to see what's going to happen with Darth Vader and blah, blah, blah. But as an adult, you grow and you start to realize and appreciate there's something to this person. I want to know more about her. And I feel like between this and Rogue One, we got to see, in the Aftermath, Chuck Wendig's Aftermath books as well, we really got to see more about her and what makes her tick. And I think this was a beautiful exclamation point on her.
Yeah, I agree.
It's good to see her, like you said, when I'm thinking back to young me seeing Mon Mothma, to getting to see this a little bit more development. To see, we didn't know very much about her. So yeah, it's good to see her in this series.
So unfortunately, we are on our last one. I wonder if we're all going to have the exact same one.
Oh, I'm still staring at my notes and I'm juggling which one.
Ooh, what's it going to be? Spin the wheel. What did you come up with for your last one?
Okay, I'm going to have to go with the moment in Jedi Knight, in Kanan's sacrifice, as he jumps in to that fireball to hold it back, and he looks back at Hera, and when his eyes transitioned and his vision was cleared again and his eyes were returned to normal, that was such a gut punch to me. I like it was solidifying what I already knew was happening in front of me, but I couldn't process it. But it was like, no, there's no going back from this at this point. But the metaphor in that, where we've gone from clouds to clear. The storm has cleared. We've gotten through this. Kanan suddenly sees everything again. He sees the past, the present, the future. He knows what Hera wasn't telling him. He sees it all, and the storm has passed, and that moment was so final but powerful in what he was doing. That was a moment that really that took a lot I think I had to like stop it and really take a moment to collect myself. And I know a lot of people missed that part when I would talk about it with other fans, and they're like, "Wait, what are you talking about?" His eyes changed. I'm like, "Oh, go back and look. Go back and look." That was an incredibly telling moment.
I think that was thrown in at the end of production on that one as well.
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
it was.
It's great.
Yeah, painful, powerful. Just there were so many things in that 1 second moment.
And metaphorical, like you said, very, very much so.
Yep.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Swara, what's your last one?
So my last one actually isn't one that I feel like a lot of people talk about. I feel like most people will talk about, the famous episode, the Door episode. Oh my God, did I forget the name? A World Between Worlds. Yeah, just had to look at it. Sorry, I had a mind blank. It's a little late here on the East Coast. But I really like the episode Wolves and the Door, in which Ezra, Sabine, the whole team follow the wolves to find the door to the World Between Worlds. And I really like how this episode is paced. I really like how it's the sort of gradual crescendo of them following the wolves and figuring out sort of like clues here and there about how they need to find this mystery thing that the Empire is trying to hide. And at the very end of the episode, Ezra and Sabine find the gateway, and they put these clues together. They recognize the certain patterns and certain symbols on the door that they need to follow to unlock it. And I just find it to be a very clever and well-written episode in that regard.
It was a fun puzzle.
It was a fun puzzle, exactly. I feel like the writing was very tight, that the characters were all very focused, and I feel that it really allowed Hera to continue like feeling her grief. But in the previous episode, was really dealing with her grief, but here she puts herself back in the fight after grieving for Kanan. And yeah, I just really liked it. This episode left a really good impression on me for how well it was written and how well, it used its characters.
Yeah, that was an important part, because that is the beginning of that whole World Between Worlds arc, and the setup. There's no payoff without that beautiful setup as well.
Right, exactly.
My last one, and I can't believe this hasn't come up yet, is the epilogue. The very last sequence.
I was hoping that was my other one I was juggling. So I'm so glad you're bringing that up.
Oh, sure. Because, the thing about these huge sweeping stories, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, what have you, often the ending of these huge epics are very, very hard because, our buildup, our anticipation, our excitement, it's very, very hard to meet those things. And this took my expectations and completely eradicated them and just brought it to another level, because it closed some storylines.
Yes.
Which I think is very important, and I think is a good, healthy way to tell a story. But it also opened up new ideas to possibilities for the future of things that are yet to be explored. But it makes sense considering the history, not only the season or the series, but Star Wars in general. There were things in that episode that you could point back to the very first time we ever saw Ahsoka in the Clone Wars movie. And I love it. I think it's so smart in the way that Dave and the story group and everyone at Lucasfilm creates and crafts these stories. And they don't leave any threads dangling, but they also open up possibilities to new ones. It was great, because honestly, if that was the last we saw of Ezra and we didn't know he was being looked for, it would still feel satisfying in a way, because we got to find him somehow. But just knowing that there's some sort of expedition to find him. Of course, I mentioned earlier the fact that Kanan and Hera have a child, and the child's name is a very much a nod to EU fans, of Jason Solo, and it was just wonderful. Just what a touching, beautiful sequence, and I can't get enough of that last. And plus, we've got also the wrap up when you've got Zeb, who is with Callus. Who at the very first episode of the series, they were at each other's throats, and now they're brothers.
I loved that.
It's beautiful.
I love seeing that. I always love a good redemption, and Callus, that was definitely a favorite part of the series for me as well, was his redemption.
Oh, absolutely stellar. Well, hey, this
so great. Yeah.
This conversation was stellar because the two of you, your passion and your intelligence just shine through. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us on Coffee with Kenobi. Where can people find each of you and your contributions to fandom? And Angela, let's start with you.
I can be found on Twitter at Crisscross Applesauce. Instead of spelling out cross, you just put an X. So Chris X Cross Applesauce on Twitter. I have an Instagram under the same handle as well.
You can find me on Twitter at Swarz C Walker. That's SWARZ C Walker. And you can find my podcast, Beltway Banthas, which covers the intersection of politics and Star Wars, wherever you get your podcast. And like we discussed at the beginning of the show, I'm also a host of the Flash podcast. So, you can check us out there if you're a fan of the CW's The Flash.
Perfect. I will definitely have links to both of those things in the show notes. We'll take a quick break. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are the podcast you're looking for. This is...
Before we get to email, I want to thank our CWK sponsors: Penguin Random House Audio, One Nation Coffee, Harry's Razors, and Mouse Fan Travel. Please support them the way they support our podcast. And remember to listen to new and archive shows of Coffee with Kenobi wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, Spreaker, Overcast, Blog Talk Radio, Player FM, or our website, www.coffeewithkenobi.com. And if you listen to the show through iTunes, please leave us a review. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, and Tumblr, and we'd love for you to check us out there. Also, be sure to listen to our CWK family of shows, including Legends Library, Rebels Reactions, Comics with Kenobi, and Lattes with Leia. Please leave a review for each of their shows as well, and be sure to subscribe to each of them individually, as they all have their own feeds now. A big thank you to Ashley Eckstein, Swara, Salih, and Angela Saus for joining me this week. Please let me know again what you want to do about Clone Wars, because I want to add it to the show really, really soon, and we've got some fun things planned for you next week. So, until next time, have a great week. This is a podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.